Lindsay, can you talk? We're trying to test the sound.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yep. No, but can you grab her Baba?
Oh, look at that baby picture.
Look at the baby.
Isn't that? I'm just trying not to look like I'm driving or in the car. I was trying to find something that was suitable. Ooh. I might do. Hold on. What do I have? The Grand Canyon is probably more.
Can we start, please?
3, 2, 1.
Welcome, everybody, to the Rye-Town Park Commission meeting of June 18th, 2024. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Debbie, please call the roll.
Commissioner Jason Klein.
Here.
Commissioner Lindsay Jackson. Lindsay, can you hear us? Yes. Lindsay said she's here. Acting Commissioner Joan Grosjean Thomas as proxy for Commissioner Louis Marino.
Here.
Acting Commissioner Jamie Jensen as proxy for Commissioner Emily Hurd.
Here.
President Zuckerman.
Here. Our first item in business is adoption of minutes for the Rye-Town Park Commission meetings of April 16th and May 18th. If there are no objections, corrections, may I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Is there any public comment on non-agenda items?
There are none.
Thank you. Our first item of business is a resolution to authorize a change order in the amount of $27,570 for labor and materials to install structural steel reinforcement of the new ADA beach level bathroom ceiling and the installation of a storm drain pipe. And we have with us our park architect, Gary Gianfrancisco. Gary, just want to tell us and show us what this is all about.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. Gary Gianfrancisco, Arconics Architecture, PC. The first image that you see there was a broken pipe which revealed itself when we started the excavation for the new ADA bathroom. We were performing the cutout where you see the lines perpendicular to each other, which was to be the location for our sewer ejector pumps. So we revealed this, and at the time we were unsure as to its origin or what was feeding it, and then as we continued to do excavation, in this image, you see the arrow points to what we believed is the other end of the broken pipe. At that point, that pipe is clay. The pipe on the inside is cast iron. The change order proposal is to continue the broken cast iron pipe. Disavowing any use of the clay tile pipe, we will run a cast iron line all the way out to the catch basin in the parking lot. During the course of the excavations for other parts of the ADA bathrooms, we came upon other storm drains, roof drains that had been blocked off, terminated, and we can only surmise that there were a host of reasons that the water probably was surcharging back into the building. By joining the pipe, water net that is now filling the hole, and this is the foundation for the ADA bathroom, the water will no longer pour into and under the excavation. What this image shows you is there's an 8-inch cast iron line from the original construction. We found it on old drawings, which was intended to take the roof drains and bring it to a cistern on the beach level. Again, we can only surmise that this has been terminated and filled with concrete to prevent the surcharge of water into the space. That's basically the summary of the proposed drain line and change order.
Talk about the part 2, the ceiling.
Yes. During the course of the demolition for the ADA bathrooms, a portion of the ceiling in the new bathroom, which is the floor of the existing bathroom, as you can see on the left, there was a portion of the concrete that just fell out, and it revealed to us the bottom of the urinal in the floor above. It was a little hard to imagine that that was in fact the case, but when I went upstairs into the existing bathrooms, you can see that the floor, you see the striations on the ceiling? That is a patch. Somewhere along the line, a patch was performed about 2 feet wide all across the bathroom, and when they poured the patch, the urinal was in place, and more importantly, the concrete never went over the wall that it sits on. It meets it, but it doesn't sit on it. So the steel proposal is to keep the concrete in place. We're not fixing it per se, but we're keeping it in place, and by picture framing the steel at the bottom of the underside of this patch, we will now support it off of the 4 walls that surround it and tie everything together. This work would have needed to have been done whether you were doing the ADA bathroom below or not, because this is a hazardous condition. There's the other photograph. So the patch runs from the wall, brick wall on the right, all the way to here. That is a patch different than the rest of the floor that is there. And you can see all of it, none of it ever bears on the outside walls. Somehow, some way, there's something holding it up there. But needless to say, holding it up there is one part, holding it all together is the more important part, which we will accomplish by steel framing. It's light steel framing. It's not anything enormous, but it'll be consistent and well applied.
Okay. Thank you for the explanation. Do we have any questions?
Gary, just explain how you're going to continue to be able to do drainage with this backflow issue. I mean, I don't think I get it. Clearly, it was cemented over because there was a backflow issue. So how does that get remediated with what you're proposing?
Well, to the extent practicable, this will keep the water out of our new construction. What we experienced was a rain event after we uncovered everything, and we had water coming in from both ends of the pipe into the excavation. So that will no longer exist. It won't impact our new development. Ultimately, you know, as we continue to go through this building, we just keep finding these kinds of things.
I just want to make sure I understand, because this is a fairly straightforward change order, but I'm wondering what it implies. So where does roof drainage now happen if this pipe is no longer a roof drainage pipe?
Where it probably was happening until we cut up the slab, it would be underneath the slab. Now, when we construct our new ADA bathroom, we're going to raise the elevation and get about another foot of gravel underneath it so that it doesn't impact the new construction. But there may still, in fact, be water migrating underneath there.
Okay.
One of the other problems with this situation is that the soil is a clay, and as you probably know, it's the worst set of circumstances. So.
I understood, Jamie, your question was the flow that was coming in from the sound.
Well, I mean,
Is
if we're
that-
terminating the roof drain, where is the roof being drained now?
Yeah, so Gary just answered that.
Yes.
that
Under
question.
the slab,
Under the slab?
yes. And once we took out the slab, then we really experienced it. So that would suppress it. The slab suppresses it to a certain extent.
All right.
You're gonna act like a trench drain? Is it, you know,
To the extent that we can do that, that's exactly what it's doing.
But
All
as
right.
you said, it's clay, so it's hard. Okay.
But hence, we're putting in more gravel underneath. And
okay. No further questions? May I have a motion and a second to approve the change order?
Second.
Joan made the motion.
Second, Jamie.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Klein?
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yes.
Acting Commissioner Grosjean-Thomas?
Yes.
Acting Commissioner Jensen?
Yes.
President Zuckerman?
Yes, thank you, everybody. And Gary, we expect this work to start this week, correct?
I'm told that Thursday they'll be on job.
Okay. We're now going to have a discussion. No. I don't want to do the discussion now. Where's the,
5.2?
yeah, the
Presentation.
yeah. I said, my eyes didn't focus. The presentation on the hazard mitigation report. James Natarelli. Gary, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, while we're doing that, the precursor to this was, I mean, we've known for a number of years that we've had a lot of outflow, especially from the pond. And the condition was exacerbated with Hurricane Ida. And as you will all recall, we've taken a lot of steps since then. For example, we had FEMA pay for the, what is it, 160 cubic yards of sand for the beach that got washed away, among other things. And part of that was we applied for a grant to study why there was so much flooding and where was the flooding coming from. And that's what we have in front of us. James Natarelli has completed this study on behalf of Dolph Rotfeld Engineering, a division of AI Engineers. Did I get that right?
No.
Okay. So James, the floor is yours.
Good evening, President Zuckerman and Commissioners. James Nattarelli from Dolph Profile Engineering of AI Engineers. We'll be talking tonight about the Rydtown Park pond drainage analysis that we recently completed. For some context, just to reiterate some of the points that Mr. Zuckerman made, the pond drainage analysis study, which you may have received earlier as a draft and more recently in its final version, was funded through a grant from FEMA last year. The objective of the study was to look at the source of recurring flooding damage that's occurring at Rydtown Park, and I'm here tonight to summarize the study, present its findings, and discuss the recommended solution to prevent future flood damage. So as you all know, this is the location of Rydtown Park and the pond located in the center of the park, slightly less than an acre of the whole park area. And the way we focused on this project was to look at the areas where we're seeing the flooding. And we basically broke it up into four different areas. The first being the Forest Avenue and Oakland Beach Avenue intersection in the city of Rye. The next being the auxiliary parking area that's just to the west of the pond. Third being the pond outlet, which is a channel that leaves the pond and heads to the east towards the sound. And the last being the Rydtown Park Beach or Oakland Beach. Oh, something happened to the formatting I see when I sent it over. Some of the text is getting lost, but trust me, these are the areas. This is the basic schematic of how drainage flows through the pond. It comes from the city of Rye. It originates from the city of Rye. And I'll get into a little bit later what the limits of that area are. But basically it comes through two piped connections from the city's drainage system into the pond. And these collect roadway runoff. There may be some house connections or runoff from properties. We're not really sure, but it definitely takes roadway runoff from catch basins through two pipes, a 10-inch pipe in the north, 12-inch pipe in the south, directly outlet into the pond. From the pond, there's an outlet or an overflow weir that spills the drainage into a channel that continues to the east towards the sound. Underneath that channel was, or maybe there still is, a 12-inch pipe there, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But there's basically, this channel conveys stormwater to the east. At the end of the channel, just to the west of the promenade, is a drain inlet. And that collects a lot of that drainage, puts it into first a 12-inch pipe that transitions to an 18-inch pipe, and that daylights into the sound as an 18-inch pipe. So that's the basic flow of stormwater from west to east through the park. And this was the central focus of our studies, this drainage course. So just a little bit more detail on these flooding areas, the first being Forest Avenue and Oakland Beach Avenue intersection. You may be familiar with this, but there is an opening in the wall at this intersection at the crosswalk. And you can see in the photo on the left that the crown of the road is actually higher than the sidewalk itself. So this picture was taken right after Hurricane Ida. The drainage system was overwhelmed. It flooded the intersection. It hopped the curb, went through the opening in the wall, and started to wash out this step. This was completely obliterated in the storm. And this had to be repaired, which it eventually was. But this is what happened. This is the condition. When those two pipes, the two pipes coming from Forest Avenue, can't keep up with the flow, it floods the intersection and comes through the wall. So this is the first section of flooding, and it leads directly into the second, which is the auxiliary parking area. And this is the area where during busy times, patrons park their cars here. And what happens in this area is as the water comes through the opening in the wall, it starts to wash out that field. You get a lot of erosion, you get some ponding, but it basically just tears the top off that section of the park. The next area, I'm going to hop over the pond, but it still deals with the pond, is the outlet of the pond and the channel downstream. So like I mentioned before, there's an overflow weir, and it looks like this. The weir itself, just to explain, is an engineered, or it's a designed spillway. It's to the left, just beyond the fence. It's just a notch in a wall, and it controls the flow of stormwater. We think that at one point this was designed, there's a small box to the right of the fence. We believe that this was designed to allow water to get into that box, which acted as a control structure that conveyed water into the pipe that I mentioned before that flows to the east. Back in 2019, we TV'd that pipe, and we found that it's clogged with roots. And so it's not really conveying much stormwater. What it is conveying is some groundwater, though. What's happening is some of the roots are infiltrating the pipe, they're separating the joints, and you get this groundwater inflow. You can see it in that photo coming from the right, and consuming the capacity of the pipe. We think this pipe is really doing nothing for the pond itself. All of the outlet from the pond is going overland through the channel, which this was, I believe, after Ida as well, really becomes inundated with stormwater. So it flows through this channel. As it starts to pick up velocity, it completely erodes. It's your river. It's the Rye Town Park River. It begins to erode the surface of the park, taking away grass and the underlying soil. As it gets down to the east, it starts to pond. When the infrastructure that's just downstream of it can't keep up with the flow, because it is a tremendous amount of water, it begins to pond. And there are a few different reasons why this happens, but this is an area that's available and does flood from time to time. It's available for ponding, but it does flood from time to time. When there's a drainage structure underneath that ponding area, and when it's opened and when it can convey stormwater, it takes the flow and it conveys it to the east towards the sound. So the next flooding area is the beach itself. And there are two main areas, and I'll split them up and talk about them separately. The first being this triangular area that starts at the arch tunnel underneath the promenade. The upstream side of that is, you can see here in the photo, is on the right-hand side of that photo. The downstream side of it is on the right-hand side of this photo. You can see as the water comes through, it just washes out the beach as it heads out to the east. And if it can't get out, it begins to flood. It sits there. But when it picks up some steam, it really begins to erode the beach. After Ida, it actually left about a 2 to 3 foot crevice in the beach itself. The other area is an area that wraps around along the seawall to the south towards Dearborn Avenue. And this is an area that's naturally low because it needs to meet the grade of the restaurant and some of the openings in the seawall. And it's lower than the rest of the beach to the east. So it's kind of where some stormwater gets trapped. When the first area that I was just talking about can't get the water out fast enough, it starts to come around this side and head to the south. As it continues south along the seawall, here's another photo of it heading south towards Dearborn. It makes a turn and heads out finally to the sound. It takes a lot of sand with it. So we created a hydrologic map. We wanted to study the hydrology of this whole system. Why is this happening? Where is all this water coming from? So again, this is the schematic of how it comes through the park. What's tributary to this system? This is a watershed map. This is all the water that's coming into the pond and the lower pond, the outlet channel area of that drainage system. Watersheds A1 and A2 are completely in the city of Rye. There's a division between that stormwater runoff and catchment based on just the topography of the road, the wall, the curbs, the drainage system there. It picks up all of that drainage. Watershed B is just overland runoff that goes into the pond. And watershed C is overland runoff that goes into the channel that's just downstream of the pond. This is the hydraulic model that we put together. The green hexagons are those different watershed areas, and the blue triangles are what we're calling ponding areas. And these coincide with the areas that I just mentioned before where we're seeing all of the flooding. So we felt like it was necessary to model these areas as ponding areas because they're holding water. So these ponding areas are P1 being the intersection of Oakland Beach and Forest Ave, P2 being the pond itself, and P3 being the lower park ponding area. We didn't model the beach because it's not necessarily holding water in a way that we want it to. We want to pass water through there, so it wasn't necessary to model that as one of the areas. And what we found was predictable. We found that water was coming through these areas at different elevations during different storms, but none of these areas were sufficient or adequate to convey the amount of stormwater that was coming in. So what this shows you is just graphs of when those events occur. When the overflow through the wall breach on Forest Avenue comes through, as the water comes over the spillway, and the water goes through the arch tunnel towards the beach. These are the three separate ponding areas that we were talking about. So we looked at a few different schemes, but the first scheme that we wanted to look at was kind of the brute force method. What if we just didn't change anything else about the way the water flows through the park, except increase everything, just make it bigger to convey the water. So in this scheme, what we're doing is we're making slight modifications to the spillway of the pond. We're also making slight modifications to the drain at the bottom of the channel area. And the idea there is to allow those areas to hold back a little bit more stormwater and give the infrastructure downstream time to catch up. So what ends up happening is you create these ponding areas. There is some ponding that happens in these areas right now to some extent, but we would be formalizing it and controlling it so it doesn't create erosion. That's the first part of this plan. The second part is to make all the pipes bigger. So right now, there's this 12-inch pipe that's running from the pond towards the beach, which isn't working. So we'd have to change it to, in order of magnitude, of about a 24-inch pipe, maybe bigger, to convey the amount of water that's coming through. And keep in mind, we're still taking all of the stormwater that's coming from the city of Rye from those two pipes into the pond. And this doesn't address any of the flooding that is happening on Forest Avenue. So we'd have to put in a pipe that goes from the pond down to the promenade. From that point, now we start to take on more stormwater. If you remember, that's that watershed B, or was it watershed C, I'm sorry, that comes into that area. So now we have to make that pipe bigger. We'd make that order of magnitude about a 30-inch pipe, could be a little bit bigger, heading out to the Sound. There are a lot of challenges with this plan. One of them being the installation of this 24-inch pipe from the pond to the promenade. This area, not only does it go from the pond underneath a pedestrian bridge, which would create some construction challenges, but then it goes through this channel where there are a lot of old growth trees. There's no chance that this pipe can be put in without damaging the root systems of those trees. I fear that we'd probably lose all of them to do something like this, to put this pipe in. Once you get down to the promenade, we'd have to change that drainage structure to accommodate the larger pipe and then continue another large pipe down underneath the promenade, underneath the ADA ramp, and then through the beach out to the Sound. Again, some challenges just getting it underneath the promenade. If that's tunneling, if that's open excavation, it's going to be a challenge. Then there's the issue of elevation going through the beach and what kind of grading might have to be done to protect that pipe and its outlet, because it's a larger pipe. We'd be talking about twice the size of what the pipe is now, twice the diameter of what the pipe is now. So we don't like this idea. What we're finding is that the problem is really the quantity of stormwater. It's just too much for this pond to handle. This pond was originally, I don't know if it was ever designed, but it just began as overland runoff from the park. It was never intended to take stormwater from the city. For a while it had been working, but it's met its life, I fear. So what we want to do is we want to divert as much stormwater away from the pond as we can. So that's where the mitigation scheme 2 comes in, where we would circumvent the pond. So what this means is taking the stormwater from the city of Rye, connecting those two pipes, disconnecting them from the pond and connecting them to each other, bringing them down Forest Avenue, making a turn, going down Dearborn Avenue, and daylighting out through the end of the seawall into the Sound. Some challenges with this plan, that it requires probably a deep excavation in Forest Avenue. If you're familiar with the topography, there's a high point about halfway down the block between Oakland Beach Avenue and Dearborn Avenue. So as the pipe is going down and the grade is going up, we're bucking grade, and that will require pretty deep excavation. We'd have to find a lane, an alignment somewhere in that road where we're respecting the required distances from water mains and gas mains, anything else that might be buried there. We'd be talking about a large pipe. This would be an arch culvert that's about 4 feet wide and about 2.5 feet tall to convey the amount of stormwater safely and out. This would convey the 100-year storm. I should mention that the previous plan as well, Scheme A, was also designed to take the 100-year storm, and this would as well. Let's see, so we talked about the open excavation. There would be a lot of maintenance and protection of traffic while you're doing this, while you're installing this, this pipe, especially in Forest Avenue, where there can be a considerable amount of traffic. and the restoration involved, because you'd have to repair that road in a way that makes it stable, that it's not going to settle in certain areas. And that's a challenge with trenching in roads. So with this plan also, we would be making the improvements to the pond and to the channel as well, the lower end of the channel, so that all of the water that goes to the pond is really limited just to the park itself. And any improvements that we make are just meant to enhance the performance of the pond in the lower ponding area, to keep all of the water in a pipe underground, never go overground and onto the beach. That's what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to prevent water from getting onto the beach, impounding it in areas that we know will be safe to take that storm water. So there's some challenges with this idea. We looked at a different route, and this is the preferred plan, is to kind of cut the hypotenuse and eliminate those two legs, cut through the park. And there's some benefits with this. This just decreases the run of the pipe by about 200 linear feet. Now we're in the park, so there's less concern with some of the backfill in the green areas. There would be some concern in the parking lot itself, where we're slicing through the parking lot, but considerably less than if we were in Forest Avenue and Dearborn Avenue. Also a lot less maintenance and protection of traffic, because now we're in the park, and where we come out to Dearborn, there's really very limited traffic at that point. So this idea, we modeled this idea, and as you can see, this is just the drainage model, some of how the sausage is made. The AA1 and AA2 are the two City of Rye areas. They go into that pond area that I mentioned before, which is the intersection of Forest Avenue and Oakland Beach Avenue. It's no longer a pond now. We're still calling it a pond because it's a node. That's how it exists in our model, but it wouldn't be ponding at this point, because now we've got this pipe to convey all that stormwater, circumvent the pond, and go straight out to the Long Island Sound. The other two ponding areas would still be ponding areas, and those are those areas that I mentioned before, where you'd get a little bit more ponding around the pond itself, some down along the promenade, in areas where those areas can take some water, and over time they would drain after the storm is over. They would not remain wet.
James, can I interrupt you for 1 minute? Joan has to leave, and I would like to have a brief discussion and a vote on the Free Tuesday policies, if that's okay with you, and then you can commence. Last year, we had a Free Tuesday policy for beach admission only, not parking, beach admission for residents on selected Tuesdays. The Tuesdays this year would be 8, starting after July 4th, July 9, 16, 23, and 30, August 6, 13, 20, and 27. Last year's impact total for the Free Tuesdays was about $3,800. One of them was over 1,000, everything else was under 1,000 a day. So I wanted to bring that up for discussion. I should have brought it up probably before James, but I thought that we would, I didn't realize that Joan would be leaving quite this early. And I want her to give her a chance to convey and to vote. May I have comments from the commissioners? Jason?
Yeah, no, just a quick question, because, we're looking at the attendance, and I see the attendance for those Tuesdays. Do we know that all of those would have been paid?
No.
Yeah, that's just total attendance, so we don't know whether those people had the passes or not.
I think most of them did not have the passes because they would have just gone in. I think a lot of them thought they were going to pay and then
Okay.
didn't have to. Am I correct, Debbie? Am I correct? Russ?
I'm going to ask Russ. Russ, can you join us at the podium, please?
Yes.
So the question that I had really about the Free Tuesdays was whether or not, do we know whether all the people in attendance were, and would have been paying customers, or, I mean, or is it just total attendance? In other words, if someone had a pass already, are they counted in those numbers?
Well, I would say if they were permit holders, they would not have registered as, that they would have paid $5. So these are only day pass people. These are people
Okay.
who showed up and bought a daily,
Bought a day.
a daily ticket.
Right,
Right.
okay.
Is that correct, Russ? Would you say?
I think so.
All right.
I actually have a question. And I'm bringing it up on behalf of Emily. We raised the administrative fee for seniors this year. So does this feel weird to me? That we're like, oh, we have to raise fees because we're short money, but we're gonna do a free day. I just wanna make sure that the messaging or the optics of this doesn't look odd. Is there a motivation? What's the motivation behind Tuesdays? Is it because of the Westchester bus? Is that where this is all coming from?
Yeah, that's one motivation. They're gonna have
Yeah.
a free bus.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm like, who's serving, who's it serving? Because who goes to the beach on Tuesdays? Seniors already have a great deal, we just gave them an administrative fee. It just feels kind of optically a little weird. So I just was trying to kind of make sure we process that.
Well, just a statement about the lifetime resident free passes, right? Those are people who have had their passes since at least 2009, 2010, and have never been charged a dime.
Yeah, I
Right,
don't have a problem
so-
with that. No,
The $10 administrative fee in order to enable staff to process those passes is pretty modest. I can't speak to the policy of all, I probably can, which is there's a consistent emphasis on welcoming residents to Rytown Park. How do we welcome residents? And that really is the motivation behind the introduction of this pilot program that we introduced last year for the first time.
The upside is it may allow people to come to the park who otherwise would not, and then say, we really like the park, and we'll come back, and it's actually worth the $5 to come back,
or buying a seasonal.
or to buy a seasonal pass. That's the theory behind it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the theory is great. I just wonder how you test it with all these ways that we're doing things. So I just sort of wanted to make sure that optically it looked okay. Because we're in the red. You know me, Josh is in my ear. I'm representing the mayor. You know, we're in the red and we're giving away free. So I just want to make sure we're thinking about it, that there's a way to test your theory of change, if you will, at some point.
The entry fee will be $6 this year.
I didn't hear that.
The entry fee will be $6 this year.
Oh, the entry fee, that's a good point. So the entry fee would be $6, so that, because we raised the resident day rate.
Weekday day rate, yes, that's correct.
Thank you, weekday day rate.
It'd just be so wonderful to know whether on a Tuesday it's meeting the needs of people that would most benefit from it, that would really, what is it about a Tuesday that makes it special? I mean, would
Well,
it be?
one of the things
Not
about
that
it-
many people come Tuesday,
Yeah,
that's the whole
yeah.
idea.
It's a light day.
Yeah,
It's a light day, so
Yeah.
it's not like they're pressing people, you know, at the parking lot.
yeah.
I want to mention as well, I don't know that this is not part of an argument per se, but I've been in touch with Westchester County's Department of Planning and Transportation, and we are in the process of arranging for a Rytown Park bus stop on Tuesdays again. That has not been secured, but it's in process.
So the hope is that people that would not otherwise come to the beach because of a lack of transportation, maybe 16-year-olds that have a day off and they get to come down to the beach and it doesn't cost them a lot and they live in Portchester or Rybrook. I mean, that's the argument, it's just how do you know?
Exactly.
Right,
So it's a free bus,
right.
and now that
Yeah.
bus will drop them at the park,
Yeah.
where they will get free entrance to the beach.
It'd be nice at some point to measure this, like,
We're trying to measure
Yeah.
everything.
yeah,
I think it would be a good idea, Russ, if the attendants at the booth would ask, how did you get here? And if they say, I parked my car, that means they're paying for parking. And, you know, they're getting the free admission, as opposed to coming on the bus. If they say, I came on the bus. And we could also do a survey on Tuesdays, have one of our interns survey. Ask questions, then we'll know.
Three arrivals, right? So you have somebody.
Right, it's, yeah, there are, the stop, what Russ has said that wouldn't be on the mic was that there are 3 drop-off times in the morning, 3 pickup times in the afternoon. So it would be a pretty easy thing for us to have a staff member there surveying how many people are getting off the bus to come to the park.
All right.
Is there any collaborative marketing with the county, since they do have free bus service all summer, to
I would certainly hope
emphasize?
so, right, yes.
Okay,
If we certainly had collaborative marketing last year,
got it.
and I would fully intend to do that again this year.
Especially now that we have text my gov.
That's right.
This is one of these wonderful things that if it really does benefit the community, then it's worth the small minor benefit, the Paul minor hit. But when we're in the red zone, and it's not really benefiting the community we want it to benefit, then it has to be looked at every year.
Well, at the moment, we're not in the red,
Okay.
but it's only due.
And as everybody keeps reminding me that I always say, if the weather is nice every weekend, we will be in the black. And if it rains every weekend, we will be in the red. So, okay, let's take a vote. It's not a written, we didn't do a written resolution last year. We'll do it orally. Joan, you want to make the motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Right?
Aye. Lindsay, are you an aye? Okay, Joan, thank you so much.
Hi, Joan.
That's a thumbs up. I saw the thumbs up from Lindsay.
With the baby.
Oh, and now you woke the baby, Gary.
She's
All
being
right.
considerate by having herself on mute with the baby.
All right, James, come on back. Thank you. Do you remember where you were?
And we're back. Yeah, let me just,
We're discussing Plan 3. We're going to call it the Goldilocks Plan.
to be. This is generally the hydrology of what this proposed system is, and it's AA1 and AA2 are the City of Rye watershed areas. They go directly to Forest Avenue and then out to the Sound. I think I mentioned those, but then the Upper Town Park watershed goes to the pond, the Lower Town Park watershed goes to the outlet channel. We would, like I said, we make some improvements to both of those quote-unquote ponding areas to increase their capacity during those storms, but otherwise, the pond level, we wouldn't change the existing spillway elevation of the pond. So the level that it's at now that's how it would be in dry weather. It's only during storms where we would want it to pond up a little bit more to give downstream infrastructure a chance to catch up. This is a conceptual plan that shows basically the same thing that I just described in the previous slide. The 2 drains, the yellow line being the diversion around the pond. We'd pick up the 2 drains on Forest Avenue, come into the park, make a turn, cut through the parking lot, out to Dearborn, and then out through the end of the seawall to the Sound. I'm also pointing out in this drawing the improvements to the pond and the lower channel area. We also ran some hydraulic models for this plan. This is the profile of that diversion pipe. Forest Avenue on the left, the Sound on the right. What we did was, this software allows us to put in the elements of the diversion pipe, elevation, size of the pipe, different runs of the pipe lengths, and then allows us to put in the flows during certain storms and where along that run those flows come in. So what you're looking at right here is the 1-year storm coming in at the top, and through all of these, we figured we want to do worst case scenario. What's worst case scenario? Well, that's when the tide is up as high as it usually is, which would be spring high tide. Happens about once a month, where elevation here would be 4.78. And what we're seeing is there's a little bit of I don't want to say backup because it's not backup, the water is still getting out, but the hydraulic grade is enough on the uphill side that it is getting out. This is safely conveying the 1-year storm even when the tide is up. The next one is the 10-year storm. Same thing is happening. We're getting the water out. The 50-year storm, you do start to see that the capacity of the pipe is starting to fill up, but it's all still contained. And lastly, the 100-year storm, it's all still in the system. It's not coming out anywhere. We're showing that this size pipe is sufficient to carry this flow even when the tide is up. We feel that this works. So we sized it just to take that 100-year storm and safely convey it through.
So this solid line there, that's the capacity?
The solid, yes, I think so. I think I'm answering your question. Yeah, the blue band is the water in the pipe. The line just above that is the crown of the pipe. That's the top of the pipe. Yeah, so you can get up to that. However, what we're showing in the 100-year storm is some of the manholes do start to fill up. So you see in that middle section that you'd pointed out, those manholes are filling up, but they're not exceeding the rims, the top covers of those manholes. It's still all in the system. So the last thing we did was we put a price tag on it. We tried to be very, all right.
The scary part. So this basically is taking the water from Forest Avenue, right? We're not dealing with this plan, we're not dealing with the water that emanates only from the park.
We are to an extent. So the first part of your question, yes, that's true. This is taking all Forest Avenue and those upland areas that are coming into Forest Avenue into that system and
Right,
rerouting
from
it
the
around
street.
the park.
In other words, this is the City of Rye water discharge as opposed to the park water discharge.
That's correct. All the water you see in this pipe, in this elevation, this profile, is all City of Rye stormwater from their drainage system. The next part of your question was about addressing the infrastructure of the park itself.
Right.
And what we are proposing is some improvements to the spillway, some improvements to the lower channel area coming out from the spillway to allow those areas to pond up a little bit, where we know that those are safe areas in the park where water can get impounded, and still, at least during the storm, they can be safe in those areas. And over time, after the storm ends, those would drain out and return to their dry day state.
What would you do with the archway under the promenade?
It would remain as is. The only thing that we would have to change there is that on the, at the end of the channel where that drainage structure is, there's a 12-inch pipe that leaves that structure heading downstream for about 20 feet before it changes into an 18-inch. The 12-inch is restricting the flow. So we would have to increase that to an 18-inch to match the downstream. That 20 feet is all underneath the promenade. There may be an opportunity to do that without upending the promenade. Maybe there's a way to do that by hand underneath in the tunnel. We haven't looked at that yet. But that is part of the plan. That would have to also be done to increase the capacity of the system heading out to the sound.
Is there a way to eliminate that pipe? We always have a problem with that pipe being exposed going under the sand.
Unfortunately, you have this low area that's behind the promenade that water has to go somewhere. So that pipe is really serving a purpose, and the promenade is just spanning over what was probably a natural drainage course from the pond to the sound at one point. But that water does need to get through.
James, the City of Rye is involved in a lot of storm. The City of Rye is currently involved in a major stormwater project. How much coordination did you do in doing the study with what's going on with the City of Rye right now?
I haven't looked at any of the studies that they've been doing. I have talked to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing. I don't know if it includes this area. I have talked to Ryan Coyne about the park itself and the infrastructure. And actually, they were very helpful giving me some GIS maps of the drainage system to confirm some of the things that we thought we knew about the system. So that was great. That was a big help. And he also cleaned the pipes from Forest Avenue going into the pond, and also TV'd them to confirm some of the connections that we needed to know about. So to the extent that they're doing a study, I'm not really sure what that includes.
I don't necessarily know either, but I wanted to make sure as we're talking about something like this, that there's a fulsome conversation or discussion with the city of Rye.
I'm open to having that conversation.
I did notify Greg Usry. Oh, I'm sorry.
I know.
I didn't realize you were talking.
No, I was just saying,
I
if that's the Ramble report, then it deals mostly with the Blind Brook itself, because we've been involved with them with that.
Yeah. And I'm thinking more about the Oakland Beach Avenue and the storm waters that come
Right.
down Oakland Beach Avenue, so.
Right.
Which this reads like it's coming into the park.
Yeah.
This is the end of the, this
It
is
is.
quite literally the end of the pipe, right? This is
Yeah.
the end of the system.
Yeah.
I would also say this is the beginning of the conversation. I sent a copy of James's report to Greg, Ryan, and Christian Miller, and alerted them to this presentation as well. So
Terrific.
I'm sure they'll be watching or recording. In fact, Greg wrote to me and said that he would be watching. So we'll start the conversation now.
Yeah, I think that there has to be coordination, obviously, with the city of Rye, whatever plans they may have or not yet have for that part of the city that abuts the park, especially what your A1 and A2 areas, that they may have already been considering something over there. I don't know, but that certainly should be checked out. So, okay, you want to talk about cost?
Karen,
Yes, Lindsay.
I apologize for not being able to be there in person tonight. We've had a couple of emergencies. But I did want to ask about, the need to possibly tear up the promenade. Do we need some kind of, I guess, permission to do so? Does that impact the historical nature of the park?
Proposing tearing up the promenade.
So we won't have to dig or excavate the promenade. We would go underneath or tunnel through?
Yeah, under the arch. James is talking about working with the arch and going through the arch and keeping that. My question would be about blocking the arch, as Russ has already done with sandbags to prevent the water from flowing through the arch onto the beach. So,
It's been very effective.
well, one wonders if something like that should be part of the planning when we go forward.
That's what when I was mentioning the improving the controls at the bottom of the channel
Yeah.
area, it would be more formalizing what the park staff is already doing, so that they don't have to move sandbags in and out, that it's just there, that's how it's meant to be.
Right.
Yeah.
With the nice rocks that match the seawall, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, please continue.
So we've been involved in a lot of conversations with FEMA, as I mentioned before. They're funding this study with the idea that eventually we'd be able to present to them a plan which hopefully they could fund. So with that in mind, we try to be very conservative in our estimates to make sure that we're covering everything, that we're taking into consideration timing as well. If this is something that we need FEMA approval and grants for, we're probably talking about some time before those come through. So we're looking into the future. We're trying to predict, how things are going to change, availability of material. So we're trying to be a little bit conservative with this estimate. What we've considered is the engineering up front. That includes geotechnical engineering. We're doing some borings or probes to find exactly where the rock is below grade, because we do think there's going to be considerable rock coming through any of the avenues that we take to make these open cut excavations. We see the rock outcroppings in the park. We know it's there. We can see it poking up through the parking lot in some areas. We know that there's rock. That probably accounts for about $500,000 of what we're looking for in the construction cost. And then we've also included construction inspection administration, which we figure construction would take about 6 months, conservatively. And those are our numbers. The range is 3.3 to 3.5.
My guess is closer to 4. So, all right, James mentioned FEMA. I was going to give a little update on our capital program that's under consideration. And FEMA is one source of revenue. The other source is the county stormwater management program, which we have already started discussions with. So hopefully between the two of them, we can get 100% of the funding, whether it's 3.8 million or 4.2 million. We're not going to know that number for a while. But James, would you consider that this is now the final plan, or do we need more, let's say, sort of touching and petting it a little bit to bring it to the fore?
I would say the initial planning part of the project is done. If the commission elects to go with this scheme 2B, we would go ahead with, well, I guess we'd have to talk about how the different steps work, but we would start looking into the details of the plan. What exactly do we need to do to the spillway? What does that require structurally? What does it require to make the improvements to the channel as well? We would look at some of the other elements that we have to look at on Forest Avenue for picking up that drainage. We have to change those catch basins. It would be all the details, but the heavy lifting of the project at this point, I think, is complete, as long as the commission agrees that this is the direction to go.
I don't think we have much of a choice based on the erosion that we suffer every time we have a major storm, and even not a major storm. But the question is, what do we do tomorrow? We need to contact FEMA, and who does that? Is that our grant writer? Is there something for the grant writer to do? Do we pick up the phone? Do we speak to Dishes about it?
That I think, frankly, I think the next step is for me to contact the project manager assigned for this grant. We'll
Right.
set up a meeting. If it's still the same person who was assigned 6 months ago, which you never know, but we'll figure out who that is. James and I will meet with her, make the presentation, and then discuss what our next steps are. I will also loop in the Department of Homeland Security people who've worked really closely with us on all of our disaster recovery, their disaster solutions. They are very familiar with the park.
All right, and keep the city of Rye informed, Greg Ussery and Ryan Coyne,
Of course.
so that, we work hand in glove together. So, and as I say, we'll also take steps to work with the county, which we'll have to get into the stormwater management. There's a word that they use, not resource. Yeah, the advisory board, but to get into the system, the reconnaissance plan. Why they call it a reconnaissance plan, I do not know. But yes, to get part of their, get into their reconnaissance plan.
I think it originated as a questionnaire to all the communities. They were doing some reconnaissance by going to the community and saying, where is your flooding? I think that's where that originates,
Yeah.
I think.
James, this is Anthony Zano. If you want me to explain that a little bit, I can, but if not, it's not necessary.
Anthony, you're here. This is Anthony Zano of AI Dalf-Rotfeld, formerly Assistant Planning Commissioner for the County of Westchester. Thank you, Anthony.
Planning extraordinaire.
Yes.
Let's stop that. But if you want, I can just tell you just a general description of the next steps that we would have to take to be considered for the county's BPL 26 flood mitigation funds. So, as they mentioned, we would have to go to the Stormwater Advisory Board to amend the reconnaissance plan to include this project, which is not currently in the plan, which is not a big deal. They would do it at the same meeting that they would then amend the reconnaissance plan, and if they so choose, they would recommend it to be going for funding. Then it goes to the county planning board for approval, which talks about the bonding, and then the board of legislators. But so that's how that process goes. It's a long process, but it can be done.
When you say long, are we looking for a funding approval in 2025 or 2026?
In my opinion, the study is now complete. It is, now we're in June. So currently, based on our meeting with the Deputy Commissioner, David Kavinga, there's currently what they've allocated in the program, they've already have it earmarked for other projects. So this project, we should move forward with my recommendation is move forward if this committee so chooses, but move forward with the project to get it to the Stormwater Advisory Group, but no action, actually, we can do that piece, but until they have funding, it would not go until 2025. And then, honestly, knowing how government works, I worked in government for a little while, we would request funding in the fall to be considered for 2025 funding. That would be the best thing. But by the time we get the intermunicipal agreements and contracts executed, this would be in my opinion, a 2026 construction project. But the goal would be to take the study that James has described before you, and now that we have a clear direction, and FEMA has already funded this study, you would make the application to the county, talking about how it's already supported with other funding, and that gives it strength. But we need to start the process in the fall. Actually, as soon as possible, so we get it in the 2025 county capital budget, so they can allocate enough funds in that capital project for projects like this. So it moves at snail's pace, but it's just need to keep pushing it. But that's the process.
All right, Anthony, thank you. That helps clarify. That means we have to start tomorrow. All right? Okay. Any more questions for Anthony or James? All right, do we have a consensus that we start moving forward on this process?
I believe so. I think
We're not spending money right now.
Right, exactly.
In fact, hopefully we're not spending money at all.
Right, I think the idea is now to start trying to find the funding, and
Right.
that's what was just being discussed. So I think this is something to move forward on.
Okay,
In that sense.
good. Is Lindsay still on?
Yeah, I think she's still there. Liz, you
Yeah.
still there?
Oh, because,
Yeah.
there she is. Okay. You're in agreement?
I'm in agreement as well, yes.
Good. Thank you. All right. James, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and I apologize for the brief interruption.
No apologies.
Actually, Garrett,
Yeah.
He was there, he's gone. Anthony, you're on mute.
sorry about that. One other thing, so everyone understands the process and entities that are responsible for what. This application is best if the town of Rye is the applicant, because the town of Rye has received other discretionary funds from the county, and there's no issue with them complying with that, discretionary fund policy. So given this, most of this work is in the park. So the town of Rye, in my opinion, should be the lead on this project. The commission should be in support of. The city of Rye should be in support of. But this town of Rye is seeking FEMA funds and the county BPL 26 flood mitigation funds to construct these improvements, some of which are in the public right-of-way with the city. So we hope the city works with us to grant whatever work easements need to be done. But the lead on this project, to make it simple, it was be the town of Rye. So I just wanted everyone to understand that, and that might add some a little bit of understanding.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. All right.
I'm just thinking this there may be the recipient of the 404 hazard mitigation grant, which funded this study. The applicant is, the entity is Wrighttown Park Commission. So we'll have to go through an additional hoop of convincing FEMA that we're going to switch lead agency.
I don't know if
to
we have to do
continue
that.
the
I
project.
agree with Anthony as far as county funding. I think that for FEMA funding, we can stay with the Wrighttown Park Commission. We'll have to think that through, and we'll discuss it with both FEMA and the county to see what's the best match and how we're going to do that. Because I think that, you know, whenever we make an application, the applicant reader is always confused as to who we are.
Well,
So-
actually, Gary, and just to clarify, so when you take an action with the county, you'll name lead agency being the town of Rye. If you're seeking funds from another agency, and if it's a federal source, they'll do a NEPA, which is it's different than the seeker. So Deb, you bring up a good point, but it might be able to go parallel tracks without switching, because that was the entity that started the study. So that's a good point, and it needs to be followed through, but let's see if we can go parallel tracks without having to switch. But
Anthony, everybody knows everybody on this. I mean, the people in dishes, you know, it's State Homeland Security, FEMA, the county, they all know who we are at that level. And we'll work it out with them as to who the applicant should be. But either way, the project is going to be the same.
No.
All right? Anthony,
Yeah, I
thank you for
understand.
coming. I appreciate it. I really do.
No
Much.
problem.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you, James, for showing up physically.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's a lot of work, it's great.
They did put a lot of work in it. All right, moving on. What seems to have dropped off the agenda from the original one is a report that I was going to give, which I will give anyway, regarding an update on capital and where we are. The first one is what we just discussed, so I won't discuss it again, stormwater management in the park. The next one is the beach level bathrooms, which we discussed earlier, and for which we approved a change order. So the beach level bathrooms are under construction, and construction of the actual bathrooms will proceed as soon as we do the drain pipe. The pavilion roof, as you're aware, we made application for both pavilion roofs. We have funding for one, which we're going forward on. Construction is scheduled to start on or around September 1, immediately on completion of our beach season. We have submitted an additional SAM grant request to Assemblyman Otis, who has received it and is going to move it forward to the Assembly. My guess is, and based on previous experience, I would think that we would probably get approval sometime next spring and probably go to construction again September 1st of 2025, assuming all goes well. The one thing that I do not know, and I've asked Gary Gianfrancisco to check with the contractor as to whether the price for the two pavilions will hold until we do the second pavilion. If it holds, I believe we do not have to rebid it because the price would be the same and there's no reason to do that. If, however, the price does not hold, we would probably have to issue a new bid for the second pavilion. Grants that we have already submitted for include the sidewalk. You will remember there was a bit of discussion. We submitted a TAP grant to the New York State Department of Transportation, and we are still waiting to hear. The retaining wall. This is one of our projects that we are spending a lot of time trying to get funding for. We have submitted an application to the National Park Service for a preservation grant. We are waiting to hear. We are told that we can hear at any moment. They said originally late spring or early summer. It is now that time, so we may hear next week or next month or whatever. That's a 50% grant. We are combining that with applications to New York State Office of Parks through the CFA process, as we have done previously, and also through Westchester County for CDBG funding. Hopefully, we will get the Parks Service grant, and each of those would be 50% grants as well. We have also submitted a low-cap grant to Senator Mayer's office, which they have acknowledged, and they are going to be moving that forward. And we have, that's one of the items we also submitted to Senators Schumer and Gillibrand for congressional directed spending. So all of those have been submitted. And if anybody would like to ask me, what are you going to do if you get all of the grants? Well, we will figure that one out if we get them. So the parking lot. We're going to submit, I mentioned this before, that we're going to submit another application to the GIGP program funded through the Environmental Conservation Fund.
Facilities Corporation.
Environmental Facilities, right. Okay. Environmental Facilities Corporation. Oh, isn't that the green resilience? There are two grants we're applying for. One is the GIGP program. The other is the Green Resiliency Grant. And you're saying that both of those are through environmental facilities?
No, I think the resiliency grant is, I don't have it in front of me, the agency that's issuing that. But the Environmental Facilities Corporation is the Green Innovation Grant program.
Right, that's what we did last time, yes. And the Green Resiliency Grant is another environmental agency. It might be conservation. There's New York State Conservation, right? You know this.
I don't know who issues
the grants. Anyway, our grant writer has it. We're going in that direction. It's also something that was submitted for congressional directed funding. The bathhouse interior, much asked about. As you all know, we have an approved grant for the estimated 50% of the construction costs through New York State Parks. And we have requested the additional 50% from the County of Westchester. That was budgetary items submitted by our two legislators, Catherine Parker and Nancy Barr. It's in the capital program, and now it's been moved to the County Planning Board, where they will review it on July the 3rd. And assuming we get through the County Planning Board, then we need to enter into an IMA with the County of Westchester and have it approved by the Board of Legislators. So those two key steps, with any luck, we could get that approved by the fall. Other things that we are working on. We are going to how to phrase this? We're going to resurface the path around the pond. I think it's still up in the air whether we're going to put gravel or item 4. That's going to be up to our Director of Grounds and Facilities in consultation with various contractors. The money from that, correct me if I'm wrong, Debbie, the money from that, for that, is coming from FEMA funds that were not expended on the beach sand. Am I correct?
No, they're FEMA funds that were specifically identified for restoration of the promenade, the overflow parking area, and the Middle Pond Path.
Okay.
So
Separate project. So I don't know everything.
They were FEMA funds specifically for those 3 areas that have been, the funds have been received and have not been spent yet. So this will
Okay.
finish that endeavor.
Okay, I'm going to have to amend my little notes. Okay, the promenade path. We received an email from a resident who uses a wheelchair with the thought that it was very inconvenient for her to go along the promenade because it was so bumpy. And could we do something about it? Well, since one of our goals is to make all of our facilities fully accessible, what we're planning to do is to submit an application to both state parks and the county through CDBG to put a 5-foot sidewalk along the promenade going from the ticket booth to the north end so that it will be accessible for people who are not able easily to walk on the path that can be somewhat choppy. Since this is a new idea, I don't foresee that we will be able to get this into the CFA process that's due July 31st, because in order to do that, we would have to do seeker. And I don't think there's enough time to declare lead agency, wait the 30-day period, and make a determination as to whether it's a type 1, type 2, or unlisted, and go through that. However, I meant to ask you this earlier, Deb. I think we can put this in for CDBG as part of it, because I don't think that there's that time limit on the next round of CDBG. I don't think that's due yet. Am I correct?
The CDBG is due in August sometime.
In August. Is that the full 3-year program, or is it going to be in stages like it was last time? Do you know?
It will be the.
In other words, because we would.
I think it's year 2 and year 3 of the cycle.
I think we need to look into see if we need to do seeker before we make the application. I don't think we need to. I think we can make the application and then do the seeker.
CDBG would be NEPA,
NEPA.
because they're federal funds.
Yeah, it would be NEPA.
And the county planning department does the NEPA.
Yeah.
And CDBG's deadline is August 16th.
So I think that we could do the CDBG, and they would do the NEPA. So I don't think we have a problem there. And then by the time we get that, and since we have a lead time on it, we could plan on doing a CFA with parks for the 2025 CFA year.
Yep.
And combine those, because it's federal. Actually, they're both federal.
What?
No, they're both federal and state. So we could balance one with the other.
Could also add the sidewalk project to our low cap grant application to Senator Mayer, possibly even also to Assemblyman Otis, so that should one of the other retaining wall grants come through, we would then be permitted to apply whatever funds are remaining of what they've arranged to the sidewalk project, which could be a match for the federal funds.
We could do that. I'm just worried that that neither Assemblyman Otis nor Senator Mayer has enough funds, because Senator Otis's funds would be expended on the pavilion, so it would be Senator Mayer, and we could talk to her about that as well as adding that, because we would, if we got all the other grants, we would not need the LOCAP money for the retaining wall. We could then use it for the path, depending on the cost. Sounds like a plan? I feel like a juggler. Moving on.
I wanted to add one other point to the sidewalk idea. In addition to achieving ADA compliance, which we don't currently have for the promenade, the introduction, actually, we currently have a sidewalk that is crumbling in a portion of that.
A small portion.
Right. The introduction of the sidewalk will help us with some of the stormwater runoff that is currently plaguing the promenade, because the water flows off the hill and across the promenade and down and creates a washout for sand also. So the introduction of a curb will help that to some extent.
All right. Another reason to do it. The next thing is the pavilion, seawall, and fence, which we've discussed before. That's been submitted for congressional directed spending. That's the seawall that's underneath the pavilions and the fence above it. Not the seawall itself, but the coping on the seawall and the fence. I'm going to put coping. And the last thing is the LIS study, Long Island Sound Study. And I'm going to let Debbie explain this one, because she's been involved deeply with it.
The Long Island Sound Study is a climate resiliency study. So the intention, first of all, the Long Island, the study is being completely funded by Save the Sound. They have run an RFQ and engaged an environmental engineer, which is, the name of which is Indigo River, I believe, and they will be creating a climate vulnerability desktop assessment of Rytown Park and a follow-up climate vulnerability plan. And I foresee that this work will dovetail with the work that Dolph Rotfeld Engineering has just conducted. In fact, we'll probably be giving them a giant-sized boost to, but look at the larger question of the climate vulnerability of the park and what do we do about it. So hopefully what we will come out of it, this is also a very inclusive process. This will include the first phase is one of identifying the stakeholders and meeting with the stakeholders and gathering input from a great number of all of those and integrating that into the plan as well. So this is a whole community process.
Very good. You know, I'd just like to say, you know, I read up a long list of capital projects that we're doing. If all goes as we hoped, very little of taxpayer funds would be expended on these projects, because every project that we're looking at for 50% match, we're trying to find a match with another governmental agency to make that match, so that we don't have to use taxpayer city and town funds directly. In some cases, that's not going to be possible, but that's what we're looking to do. Very, very few, if any. In fact, I'm looking at it, and there's only one project, which is the sidewalk project, that we're looking to provide a local match, And my recollection is that sidewalk project is a 75% grant, so it's only a 25% match, if my recollection is correct. So that's what we're about. Comments, guys? Not many of us left.
No, not many. No comments here.
Okay, Russ has submitted his management report. I hope everybody's read it. Thank you, Russ. And I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
All in favor? Aye. Lindsay, are you in favor?
She had to drop off.
I don't know. We only have 3 to vote to
We may
adjourn.
not have a
So I guess we
quorum
have
on
to.
that day. We never end.
We never end.
It can never end.
Let me see that cheat sheet you have.